Welcome back. U.S. President Joe Biden is set to meet House Speaker Kevin McCarthy and other top congressional leaders on Tuesday afternoon, Washington time. Well, the topic, a debt ceiling battle that is threatening to push the world's #1 economy into a crisis, one that would be catastrophic for the rest of the world. CNA's Elizabeth Neo explains how we got there.
Well, reaching the debt ceiling means the U.S. government is unable to continue borrowing via Treasury securities, money needed to pay for services such as Social Security and Medicare and even the military. And the debt ceiling is a restriction on how much more money the federal government can borrow to pay its bills. It was introduced in 1917 as a way to give the government flexibility to raise money during the First World War. And Congress sets the limit and functions as a so-called keeper of expenditures. U.S. debt has skyrocketed over the years, roughly doubling in a decade, more recently due to major government spending during the financial crisis and the pandemic. The U.S. has also consistently run a budget deficit, which means it spends more than it brings in through taxes and other revenue. And so Congress jacks up the debt ceiling fairly often to keep the lights on, so to speak. The U.S. hit its $31.4 trillion debt ceiling in January this year, about 120% of the country's annual economic output. And the Treasury began enacting temporary extraordinary measures to prevent a default for a few months and buy time for Congress to increase the debt ceiling. Now, complicating matters, the national debt has gotten much more expensive to service given higher interest rates, with annual payments spiking into the hundreds of billions of dollars. Now, the debt ceiling has been revised 78 times since 1960 under both Democratic and Republican rule. So why should this time be any different? Now, while fights over the U.S. debt ceiling are common, Republicans have become even more hardline, many of them vowing to hold out for cost cuts no matter the price. In fact, House Republicans have demanded the reversal of some of the Biden administration's agenda, such as a student loan forgiveness program and green energy tax credits, in exchange for votes to raise the debt ceiling. But Democrats object to this and insist on a ceiling with no strings attached. House Democrats have taken a key step that could allow them to dodge Republican opposition and speed up a vote on debt ceiling increase. But they know it's a long shot, as the process is time-consuming and rarely successful. Whatever it is, they will have to reach a decision soon, as the so-called Datex looms. That is the day that the U.S. government would no longer be able to meet its financial obligations. It is a moving target. Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen says it's impossible to know exactly when the U.S. will run out of cash, but she's put the date as June 1st. A failure to come to an agreement to raise or suspend the debt ceiling would be catastrophic. Yellen added on Sunday that it will cause a steep economic downturn in the U.S. and that financial and economic chaos will ensue. Remember, this has never happened in U.S. history. It came close in 2011, though, and already that had triggered a strong reaction. Markets plunged and ratings agency S&P downgraded the U.S.'s credit rating for the first time ever, making it more expensive for the country to borrow money. And so what happens if the debt ceiling is not raised? Well, a default occurs. A U.S. debt is considered the bedrock of the global financial system, partly due to its stability. And so a default could shake economies around the world. Stock and bond markets would likely plunge as investors question the value of U.S. treasuries, which are seen as among the safest investments and key to the world's financial system. The U.S. could fall into recession and many Americans would lose their jobs. Now, how a default would ripple through the economy depends on a number of factors, including the speed and magnitude of the shock's spread and how long it lasts. Furthermore, if a ratings downgrade is on the cards, you can expect borrowing costs to go up. And that is only the short-term impact. But the spending cuts that would be introduced as the U.S. pares down its budget would cause long-term pain. And so, as America's debt goes up, the clock is ticking down on a decision that must be made urgently. For CNA Explains, I'm Elizabeth Neo.